She was once a name whispered in fear, a woman who left a trail of devastation, taking lives with cold calculation and cunning precision. This is the story of Carly Gregg, a criminal who thought she could outsmart the law, until everything fell apart. Born into a seemingly normal household, Carly Gregg's early life gave little indication of the darkness that would later consume her. Raised in a small Midwestern town, Carly's childhood was marked by isolation. Teachers described her as quiet, almost invisible, but there were early signs of trouble. But it wasn't until Carly's teenage years that the world got a glimpse of her darker side. Petty thefts, a growing fascination with weapons. But nothing could prepare the world for what was to come. In 2013, Carly Gregg committed her first documented crime. What started as a simple burglary escalated into something much more sinister. When she was caught in the act by a local resident, Carly didn't hesitate. The victim, a 42-year-old man named James Carter, was found stabbed multiple times in his own home. Carly had used a knife she brought with her. It was no longer just a burglary, this was her first murder. Carly fled the scene, but it would only be a matter of time before the police would connect her to the crime. What seemed like a robbery gone wrong was the beginning of her violent spree. But that wasn't the end. Carly Gregg quickly escalated. Over the next 2 years, she became bolder, targeting vulnerable individuals in isolated locations. Her method was always the same. She would break into homes, tie up her victims, and torture them for hours before finally ending their lives. But Carly was cunning, always managing to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Investigators were stumped as she seemed to vanish after every crime, leaving behind few clues other than the sheer horror of the scene she left. In 2015, everything changed. Acting on a tip, police traced Carly to a remote cabin outside town. After a tense standoff, she was finally arrested, bringing her reign of terror to an end. When the details of her crimes came to light, the public was horrified. Carly showed no remorse during her trial, coldly describing her actions in chilling detail. The jury took just hours to convict her of multiple counts of murder, sentencing her to life in prison without parole. The crimes of Carly Gregg shook the community to its core. Families of the victims were left to pick up the pieces, their lives forever changed by her senseless acts of violence. Her arrest also led to sweeping changes in local law enforcement, with increased funding for forensic technology and more extensive background checks for parolees. Carly Gregg now sits behind bars, serving a life sentence. But her name will always be synonymous with fear. A woman who turned to violence and terrorized those around her without a second thought. Some say criminals like Carly Gregg are born. Others believe they are made. But one thing remains certain. Her story serves as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in even the most unsuspecting of places.